Morning, everyone. Welcome to the November 20th, 2025 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms on the left side of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated to the left side of the room. The public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the November 6th, 2025 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes is hereby opened.
And I'll second.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve those minutes. Vince seconded that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Good morning, Chair, Planning Commission. Cassie Hayes. Item number 2 before you is a variance request to increase the maximum allowed height from 15 feet to 16 feet for a detached garage. We are at property located just off of Sheridan Lake Road. This property is zoned Low Density Residential District 1 with a future land use of low density neighborhood. And access to this property is off of Sheridan Lake Road, which is a principal arterial street on the city's major street plan. What the applicant is proposing to do, this property is currently developed with a single family dwelling that you can see right here, a detached shed, and then they are proposing to construct a detached garage down here in the southeast corner of the property. That garage is proposed to be 40 feet by 50 feet, so 2,000 square feet. What they are wanting to do here is to construct this building so that they can store things like vehicles, lawn equipment, but more specifically what they would like to store in here is a car trailer. So what they are proposing with this garage is they are proposing this to have 3 10-foot tall garage doors. The 10-foot tall garage doors are necessary in order to allow it to have the proper clearance and roof pitch to store that car trailer inside. So that is why this request is before you. This is in conjunction with an oversized garage request that is on the consent agenda for the Planning Commission today as well. So this is a larger lot. It's about 2.57 acres in size. The surrounding properties, if I can get back to the aerial here, the surrounding properties as well are large acre parcels between 2 and 4 acres in size also. So that is one thing that we took into account when we were looking at this variance. The proposed garage is also going to be over 300 feet from the Sheridan Lake Road right-of-way, so that is going to provide a lot of separation from the roadway. There are also several mature trees that provide a screening buffer to Sheridan Lake Road and also to the abutting properties to the north and the south. On the east side of the property, the topography rises quite substantially on the east side of the property. In fact, it rises over 50 feet from where the proposed garage will be to where, for instance, this house right here, it's about 50 feet higher than where the garage will be. So staff does feel that there will be adequate screening to maintain privacy to the surrounding neighbors. This also will be as part of the oversized garage. This garage does need to be constructed with materials and color scheme that match the existing single family dwelling. Originally they had proposed for this to be a metal building. As part of the oversized garage, it is stipulated that it cannot be a metal building, which I've talked with the applicant. He's okay with putting siding on it that is similar to the single family dwelling. So with the screening, with the topography, and with the separation from Sheridan Lake Road, staff does feel that this is an appropriate request for this area. This is only a 1-foot deviation. That screening and that topography will allow that to be minimally impactful to the surrounding neighborhood and not detrimental to the public welfare. So there is also, I do want to point out, floodway and floodplain on the west side of this property. So that is why all of the construction on this property is taking place over here on the east side, there is a substantial area of floodway and 100-year floodplain that encumbers most of this western portion. So that is also a special circumstance that staff did take into account as it limits the buildable area on this property. I do want to make note that since there is flood hazard area on the property, even though the detached garage will not be in it, a floodplain development permit is still required since it is on the property. So ultimately, staff is recommending approval. I will show you a few pictures here that show you some of that topography. So this is looking directly at the property from the entrance off of Sheridan Lake Road. You can see that they've posted their notice for the conditional use permit. But you can see even with these trees being not leafed right now, the house sits back here. So it still provides pretty substantial screening even in the downtime of the year. And then this is looking at that topography rise to that house up there. So you can see that there's pretty significant topography in that area. And then this is looking directly at the house again, a little bit closer to show that topography rise as well. So staff is recommending approval based on the facts that this is not injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to public welfare, and that there are special circumstances on this property that do support approval of the variance request. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Haven?
Just to clarify, one of the diagrams that you showed here indicates that it appears to indicate that it's 19.6 feet to the top of the roof. And other comments indicated there was just a 1 foot variation. Could you explain that, please?
Yep, so the maximum allowed height for an accessory structure is 15 feet. What you see right here, the 19.6 feet, that is to the top of the roof. When we're looking at height, we take the median height. When it's a pitched roof, we take the median height between eave and peak, and that's where we get that height from. So if you take the median height between the 12.6 to the eave and the 19.6 to the peak, that's where you come up with that 16 feet.
Vince?
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify also that you said that, and I don't believe it's in the write-up, but the homeowner is going to match the color of the garage to the house?
Correct. Yep, that is actually a stipulation of their oversized garage that's on your consent agenda today. That is a stipulation of that because that is something that is specific to a requirement for an oversized garage, which this is.
I wanted to get that out
Yep.
now because I know it's coming up later.
Yep.
Thank you.
Eric Hikas?
Make a motion to approve under the stipulations. It's not injurious to the neighborhood, does not affect health, safety, and welfare, and there are some special circumstances. Looks like some good planning. I'll throw it out there.
I'll agree with that. Second.
All right, Eric made his motion as stated. Vince seconded his motion. Discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That was the only other agenda item we had on zoning board of adjustment. I'd look to, yeah, there you go.
Second.
Karen made the motion to adjourn zoning board of adjustment. Vince seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That takes us to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for November 20th, 2025. Again, if any members of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, please grab a speaker request form from the left side of the room, hand it to the staff seated over there, and we'll make sure you're heard. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the folks seated over there. Items 1 through 7 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following items. Item 2, 25 PD 023, and item 7, 25UR032. The Rapid City Planning Commission's actions on these items is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 7 that staff would like removed for separate consideration?
No, thank you.
All right, any items 1 through 7 that any planning commissioner would like removed? And are there any items 1 through 7 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration?
Did they remove item 1? 1 through 7, yes.
Yeah. All right, seeing none, I'd look for a motion to approve items 1 through 7 in accordance with the staff's recommendation.
Motion to approve items 1 through 7 in accordance with the staff stipulations. Second.
All right, Vince made the motion, Eric Heikus seconded the motion. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
Good morning, Chair, Planning Commission. This is a rezone request to go from heavy industrial to general commercial. We are at 3602 Campbell Street. This is just for a portion of the property. The property is about 2.5 acres. This is for the 4.33 acres on the frontage of the property. You'll note here today we've got kind of a multi-tenant building on the front. There is trailer storage that's associated with the trailer repair and sales that is on the rear of the property that would remain heavy industrial. So in looking at this property, there is a significant amount of heavy industrial on the east side of Campbell Street, and this is north of Minnesota, and that industrial runs close up to Fairmont. The other side of the street, there is a general commercial property. I'll note this is actually the juvenile hall and the Pennington County Road Shop. And then just to the south there is the bus barn for the school district. So these are more public uses on the west side of the street. And then moving further west, you get toward the neighborhood areas in the park. On the east side, you have a nice buffer with the railway. The heavy industrial serves as a really nice buffer for protecting kind of that railway use, and it doesn't, they're more compatible uses in that regard as well. The future land use of the property is light industrial, with some heavy industrial on the east side and public again on that west side that recognizes the public uses on the other side of the street. So this was one of the primary reasons that staff is recommending denial on this property. The future land use in the area does not support, nor does the comprehensive plan support the rezoning. This gives you a little better idea of where we are on Campbell. So north of Eastville is down here. So it's between Fairmont and Minnesota. There are, as I noted, there's quite a bit of industrial properties to the north and south here. There is commercial uses on either side of that as well. So for one of the criteria, the area hasn't substantially changed. It's been industrial for some time. There are sufficient commercial uses to the north and south on Campbell as well. Just a note on the existing uses, there are some non-conforming conditions to this site. Typically when we do a rezone, we have variances associated with those that do not meet the new zoning district's standards if they are a more stringent standard. There is a fence that runs the property line here that is compliant under heavy industrial, but would not be on the front setback. For general commercial, it would need to be set back 25 feet. The applicant did submit a variance request for this. We held it at this point since staff is recommending denial. If it does move forward with an approval, we would bring that variance forward to increase the height. It would have to be 4 feet or 25 feet back. So the variance would be to allow a 7-foot fence in lieu of a 4-foot fence. So just keep that in mind. that would move forward if the rezone does move forward with an approval at council. There's a couple other conditions that aren't triggered that would remain. There's paving requirements that would be for that trailer sales area, and then their landscaping does not appear to meet code either. Typically, those get triggered when new uses are introduced, or if there's an expansion of the use, or in some cases, the parking lot as well. The applicant has noted they are looking for more commercial retail, particularly restaurant uses. Restaurants aren't permitted in heavy industrial. There is some retail that's allowed in light industrial, and the permitted uses in light industrial are also allowed in heavy industrial. So there's some level of commercial that's already allowed on this property. But they are looking for that restaurant use, which would not be permitted. So that's why the request for general commercial has come forward. This is the existing building, just to get you oriented with the site. This is looking straight on. You can see they did provide their public notice. This is that trailer sales area. Looking north on Campbell. This is that juvenile hall. The road shop is over here, just across from it. And then the bus barn a little more southwest. This is looking south on Campbell. We're just turning in a circle here. This is right next door to the property. There's a construction company in here. So you can see there's not really commercial prevalent in the area. There's nothing that's changed to go through the criteria for the rezone. Again, there are some non-conforming conditions that are not consistent with general commercial. Typically, we prefer that to be paved for the trailer sales. Sometimes industrial properties can have the gravel, but for general commercial specifically, paving is more consistent with general commercial. There is a bit of an adverse effect here since it's difficult to zone industrial land. So when you start taking away industrial land, you don't necessarily get it back, and it's difficult to locate elsewhere as well. So keeping that in mind, it could set a precedent to start eating away at the industrial land along Campbell in this area. This road is actually 45 miles per hour as opposed to some of the lower speed roads in the commercial areas. So you're also kind of causing commercial uses have higher traffic, counts. And so you're also causing some traffic impacts to this area. As I noted before, we have that conflict with the comprehensive plan, and it is not consistent with the future land use. So staff is recommending denial. The applicant is in the audience if you have questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Vicki?
Chair. Yes, thank you. These are always hard. We try to work with property owners. We understand that they've got dreams for their property, and they want to get the highest and best use that they feel appropriate. This one is hard because it is heavy industrial, and we are charged with ensuring that we are allowing and preserving heavy industrial areas. The comprehensive plan cites that. It's something that was recently adopted. In this case, one of the conditions that if it would have been met, we could have leaned into is if there was a substantially changed condition in this area, and there just hasn't been. So leaning into what does the comp plan state, what does the future land use plan identify, the need to preserve those heavy industrial strips, while they may say, we're okay, we're going to put a restaurant or other commercial uses on our property with heavy industrial uses around it. When the neighbor comes in for some heavy industrial use that maybe is conditional, then it's going to impact the restaurant, and then they have a right to speak out against some of those conditions too. So we brought you a recommendation to deny, and we encourage you to listen to the applicant for why he's rezoning this.
Thank you. We do have a couple speaker requests forms on this, and before we get to those, I just want to note that we're going to limit the time for public speaking at 3 minutes per person, just to make sure everybody on this item and the next item will be able to be heard. Steve Winia, if you'd like to address the commission.
Good morning, commission members. My name is Steve Winia. Along with my wife and family, own Wingard Investments. I've been operating businesses, buying, developing property in Rapid City for 35 years. I'm here to request a rezoning on 3602 Campbell Street. I purchased the 10 acres a few months ago and been remodeling, as you can see by the building there. That was probably the ugliest building within 2 miles. And having garbage hauled off the property, and to the tune of, I've torn down 5 old buildings already, hauled them to the dump. Spent, I don't know, probably $70,000 in dump fees and getting rid of these old fallen down buildings. I believe this main corridor, 79 into Rapid City, should be, the frontage should be, it should be beautiful property right along the frontage coming into Rapid City. Landscaping, the contemporary buildings and retail businesses. There are several parcels of property within 3 blocks that are zoned general commercial. I'm familiar with most of the businesses that have been in this strip mall in front of Blake's over the years. I go by there every day, so several times maybe. And in the past, most of them actually have been retail sales businesses. There's been a dental office in there, Fastenal, insurance offices, and beyond that, I can't remember a lot of them, but I know they've been in there. My realtor, I have Shannon Brinker here. She's my leasing agent on this property. And she'll tell you that there's a need for additional retail on South Campbell. That's what basically she's had all calls on retail. The general commercial will not create traffic issues. That's a 4-lane highway with a turning lane. I don't believe that. The 7-foot fence is that's a non-issue. That can be fixed in short order, either shortened, removed, moved, whatever. The retail business on this property will generate more tax revenue for the city than heavier light industrial. I understand the future land use concept. The reality is the public and developers drive development in these mixed use areas. General commercial zoning will not cause any harm, but will enhance the corridor coming into Rapid City from the south. Heavy industrial does not bring beauty to an area, never has. The Circle K was just allowed to build on industrially zoned property.
Mr. Winnie, we hit the 3-minute.
Any questions?
Not immediately, but we might call you up for questions if we come to it, okay? Thank you. And we also have Shannon Brinker.
Good morning. I just wanted to clarify, we haven't had any restaurant interest in the property. We have had a couple of coffee shops. And what I'm hearing from, because I deal with leasing all throughout the city of Rapid City, is that that is a main corridor coming in. And what we have a lack of is general commercial where it's easy for, say, ranchers, people with big trucks, big trailers to come in and be able to get a coffee, to be able to park. We've had Western clothing stores, a salon, a spa, a lot of different uses that would not be allowed in the industrial zoning. And I don't know if we can pull up the parcel where you can see it, or if you guys can look at it, but Steve's intent is to basically create a buffer. So the long-term plan would be to develop that back area for industrial use, but to have that buffer on the front where he would be in compliance with landscaping, concrete, whatever it is that we need to do. If it's general commercial, we have no intent to keep that fence where it currently is. The variance wouldn't be an issue because we would want to go ahead and landscape and beautify and remove that fence. But But yeah, I just, and to Vicky's point, you know, I've seen Steve's plans and what he wants to do for that area, and I just think with the tourists coming in and everybody coming in from that direction, what a nice buffer. You know, we're still maintaining industrial on the backside of that property, but really beautifying that front, and also, you know, giving the people who are coming in who have those vehicles where it's tough to get into town to go downtown for coffee, or in some of those high traffic areas like, you know, Mount Rushmore Road, where, you know, to try to get a big truck in there and deal with all the traffic and everything. That's just what I'm hearing from my potential tenants, is that, that and just the visibility and the fact that it has been, you know, it has been general commercial uses forever. And most recently, we put in an insurance office, and that was with, you know, getting permits and everything from the city and their full knowledge. So I hope you consider Steve's request, because I think what he wants to do is going to be good for Rapid City.
Thank you. All right. Commissioners, thoughts, questions on this? Mike Quasney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a question. The railroad, is that not, we're considering moving that? Is that where they're considering moving the railroad out of there? And
Kip?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Cosme, we are currently undergoing the rail yard relocation and railway realignment study. So there is a possibility that that rail yard may be relocated in the future. However, we have not come up with a location at this point, nor a process to relocate. So this is the first step. The study is the first step of a multi-step process to relocate that rail yard.
that rail yard might, it moving might change the industrial, where we want industrial, because the industrial would use the railway more, correct?
That's correct. There will still be a rail line at that location, but as you can see on the aerial photograph right now, it looks like there are about 5 railroad tracks right there. That would be significantly decreased, probably down to 1 rail line at that location if the rail yard were to move. But again, that is to be determined at this point.
Okay. Well, this area kind of reminds me of south of Gillette, and they've done a lot of put commercial type restaurants, gas stations, etc. on there. And in this area, we actually, to the north and south, we're putting gas stations, and we've kind of started to do that in a way on either side of this. So I'm not sure exactly how I want to vote on this. So
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm with Mike. I'm torn on this one too. Mike, are you talking about NZ in South Gillette? Yes. Okay. So I really want to note one thing I'm seeing here, and that's the amount of work that Steve is doing to clean up this parcel and do some really nice improvements. And I'm noting the potential that the realtor is suggesting as an incubator, and those carry some weight. On the flip side, the comprehensive plan and once it's been zoned out of industrial, it's hard to zone back. Those things I'm hearing on the other side. So I'm kind of torn too. So excited to hear what my other commissioners have to say.
Haven?
Thank you. Apparently, the request is to rezone that entire western portion, which is the yellow outline here. I guess I just asked the question. I don't see that it would make a difference if only the area around the current building was rezoned as opposed to the entire 4.3 acres.
Mr. Chair,
Vicky?
that even makes more of a spot zoning and speaks to the issue of that not being appropriate in an area that's otherwise secured with industrial uses.
And it has been brought up, and I am familiar with this building. There's been some commercial uses in that building in the past. How were they allowed in that building in the past?
So there are retail uses and other activities that can take place in industrial. It's really, though, catering to the tourist traffic or, as was mentioned by the applicant, wanting to serve the general public. That would be the difference, having the coffee shop. Industrial specifically precludes that because of the truck traffic that is typically generated by uses on adjacent properties or within the heavy industrial area. And just as a reminder, this is the truck bypass route and where we would want to see heavy industrial uses.
So just to clarify, apparently there are quite a few different uses that could be made, really general commercial uses that could be made of this building with the current and heavy industrial zoning, as has been the case in the past with this building.
That's correct. Any use allowed in light industrial is also allowed in heavy industrial. And if you look at the zoning ordinance, it identifies that you can have retail stores, and this is where like an auto repair or auto parts store could be, or any retail. I mean, someone could sell T-shirts from here.
So the restriction would be for restaurants, coffee shops, that's not allowed.
Correct. Child care centers, those kinds of things.
Karen Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank Mr. Winia for cleaning up the area. I think that's a positive. And I can understand the idea of having something more beautiful along that corridor. I mean, that's something every city wants to see if you come into town. But I also know that industrial is a hard place to change. And to me, if we start changing this one parcel, we would want to change the whole corridor. And that's a huge undertaking because we don't have very much land that is industrial and hard to acquire. You lose it, it's hard to find it again. And I am torn between the idea that this is sounds like a fun place, and if I was a rancher, I'd like to have something like that I could pull in. But I think that changing this particular parcel to commercial it's something that's bigger. It needs something like a whole idea of the whole area. And since we can't really talk about that, I mean, we can talk about it, but we're not going to do that. I mean, the industrial people that are there are not going to want to leave. So I'm leaning towards saying this is not the right thing to rezone this to commercial. I think we should stick with the industrial. So that's my comments.
Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Heartland Express, isn't it? Isn't it part of it? And eventually they were going to have where from Denver to all the way through Nebraska up to Rapid, we had this Heartland Express. That's kind of, Nebraska kind of fell off as I understand, but it still is considered an entrance to Rapid City. And where I struggle is when we do the entrances to our community, I don't know if the best picture is industrial or commercial. And I'm leaning towards commercial only because of the effects. And he's done a beautiful job of rehabbing this piece of property. It's people like this that make our community better. Again, I still struggle with it, and with it being the Heartland Express, it leans me towards wanting to make that where there is some commercial in there, only because I use that road to go down even to Wyoming. So I think there's a lot of people, and I don't know if the numbers indicate that there's tourists that come in that way. I don't know what numbers we have, and maybe we have some numbers that show that that's a corridor that tourists come from the south I don't know what those numbers would be, but maybe this does indicate that we should go a little more commercial in this area instead of industrial. That's what I struggle with. So nice job on making the property look so much better. We appreciate it. So,
Vince.
Thank you, Chair. No, I agree with everything that's being said, as that these are great points to make up. And again, the most important thing is, I didn't recognize this building because of the improvements you've made. You have done a great job. And again, that's why we should be listening to you and understand what you're trying to do. So I get that. I truly do. And the challenge that I have is that, and I don't have the answer, and that is, if we needed a light industrial area, where are we going to put it? And we do have some potential changes, as has already been mentioned with the railroad. And this may be the right place. But it's a timing issue at this point for me, and I'm still thinking that I don't know where we're going to put another light industrial area. We've faced this challenge before, and I believe it was over. We now have where the offices of Green Tree are located, and now we're going to have the county building out in that area as well. So there is going to be expansion. There is potential growth. Mike brought up a good question as to more potential commercial services in this particular area. I do drive by this pretty much every other day, so I get that. So again, I thank you for bringing it, and yes, it is going to be a tough decision. Thank you.
John Roberts.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that we need to bring into this discussion is we're talking about replacing light and heavy industrial. Just to the south of here, 90 acres of light industrial has been added, and about 400 acres of heavy industrial has been added. I think that this is a big mistake or a miss on the future land use plan, and I'll regress to the last land use plan where we had that one changed because Mall Drive, the frontage of Mall Drive in that plan was said to be all, well, I should say Mall Drive from Lacrosse Street to Haynes was residential. So we changed the frontage of that to general commercial because that's what it should be on a road like that. But I believe in the future land use plan, everything from Catron Boulevard into St. Patrick Street should be general commercial on the frontage. You know, and talking about the railroad move, if every star in the sky aligns just right and the federal government comes up with a ton of money, we may do this in the next decade or two. So, you know, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars on this, for this. So, is it possible? Is it going to happen? I hope it does. I think it would be a good thing. I know the last railroad study to change, you know, the railroad tracks in Rapid was in the 50s. So, you know, I mean, these things are a big hurdle to get over. But one of the reasons that the new Black Hills Industrial Park did go in to the south of here, which right now I believe there's about 400 acres that are zoned. There's another 400 acres that can be zoned, light industrial and heavy industrial. So we are adding that. We do need it. We definitely need it. But there's a lot of places around Rapid City where light industrial, heavy industrial everything has grown around it. And I think it's time for us to take a look at that and get some of that general commercial into these sections, especially into our corridors into Rapid City. Because it's true. I mean, you drive down there and it looks like you're driving into a town you really don't want to drive into. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be changed, but everybody's used to it. I mean, it's been that way since I was born. So, you know, but I think it's time that we move on that, we upgrade it, we make our corridor into Rapid City look better. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm going to butt in with a question. This is a single parcel, correct? To the railroad tracks, and the request is to rezone a portion of the single parcel. So if there's heavy industrial on the backside, without replatting this, what are the access rules through the general commercial if we were to change the front side to general commercial?
There's no access restrictions on doing that. A parcel of property can have more than one zoning designation. The specific uses on each area need to align with the underlying zoning. And then you can have a driveway that extends from one zoning district into another.
So it'd just be up to the property owner in order to provide within code what they think is needed for the different uses on the property.
When that building permit comes in, because a change of use requires a building permit, we would look at that access to make sure that that is aligning with all regulations. There are times where you'll see a driveway that will extend from one lot to another, both owned by the same property owner, and then we have them enter into a developmental lot agreement. It prevents them from having to plat it into one lot. It ties it together so they can't sell one away from the other, and costs them nothing to do. We create the document. It does get recorded, and it preserves the right for access from one property to the next.
Okay. Thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to add a couple things. I think this area overall down the road should probably go to general commercial or something more pleasing to people driving into Rapid. And that requires like a complete thought of the land uses that we want to use for this area, what we want in the future. The railroad is going to take, that's going to be there for a long time. And people in the industrial area need that railroad. And so the area is going to be industrial as far as I can see for quite a while. So, and the other thought I had is this particular property is here before us basically because they want to put a restaurant of some kind in there, a coffee shop. And there's other uses that they can use that building for. So it's not like we're depriving him of the use of his building. I mean, if they can put, an office of some kind that meets the industrial area, I think that's good. But in the meantime, he's got a nice property that looks good, and if he's still beautifying it, people will want to rent that spot, I would think. So I think the discussion of changing this zoning is something that we need to think about in the future, not necessarily now. I think this is too soon to change that one property just to commercial for a restaurant, and that's kind of how I look at it. So that's my extra thoughts.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
Years ago, properties along Mount Rushmore Road between Omaha and Fairmont were primarily residential. And we went back, I believe it was in 1968, and no, I didn't work here at that time. But we thought ahead. What should it be? And the future land use plan that was adopted in 68 showed it all as general commercial. We created a lot of legal non-conforming uses, and those uses, some of them still exist, but we looked ahead. What is right for the main corridor through the community? What we are going to be doing in 26 is bringing forward a future land use plan update. We'll be going out into neighborhoods. We'll be bringing this to you and the city council. There's been some good discussion today. What we do adopt in 26 might look forward to what should those uses be on Campbell Street, pushing our heavy industrial even out further, knowing that we would be creating some legal nonconformities, but in essence, moving the city in the right direction.
Thanks, Vicki. Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate this discussion. Good points by everyone, including Mr. Roberts, although I think we should put a 3-minute time limit on comments up here too, so just teasing. Right. So I guess the tipping point for me is the spot zoning, and I'm gonna I'm going to use that to make my final decision. Thank you.
Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. You hate to throw shade on anybody's business ambitions, and the spot zoning is probably the tipping point for me. But I do, it's inevitable. This will change down the road. And where Kmart is now, the old Kmart, that used to be a massive lumber mill. My 82-year-old dad tells me the stories. Where the post office is now, there used to be a junkyard. So I see this inevitably turning commercial or some other use down the road, but I would like to see larger swaths of that corridor turn at once, and the spot zoning is what's doing it for me. And like I said, I hate to just turn anybody down that wants to change that corridor or do whatever they want with their property, but I'm going to vote to support the denial just because of that. But I do think someday that corridor should and will be revitalized into commercial or something else, but that's my 2 cents.
Todd? I've got your light on.
Yep. Thanks. I believe in this meeting I've heard this corridor references Highway 79, truck route, and the expressway, the Heartland Expressway. This used to be a state route and it used to be a truck route, but with the construction of Elkville, Highway 79 goes east, the truck route now goes east, and the Heartland Expressway follows the state route. This is just a local street, or a local arterial street.
Todd, always coming with the knowledge. Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I still, we talked about spot zoning, but I think that you have to start somewhere. And I appreciate, John, what you brought up. I think that there's a way to take industrial and put a nice fence in front of it and maybe have some commercial that hides our industrial and creates a zone that when you enter our city, it feels better. And I have that, even though this is just a street as it's named, it does connect to the Heartland Express. It does connect and bring people into our community, tourists, and we try to beautify those streets so that we have a welcoming effect. I will probably vote against denying this only because I think we have to start somewhere, and we have to look and see what we can do to change this. And it starts one at a time, and that's how things have changed. Whether it's the Kmarts in our community or whatever it is, we start with one thing at a time, and we change it and make our community better. So I will be going as I do not want this denied, so I will vote that way.
All right. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks everyone for their comments. This is a difficult decision, and I do appreciate very much the landowner, the property owner, and all the work that you've done. This building's been around for an awful long time. I used to go to my chiropractor in that building, Max Winkler, God rest his soul. But nonetheless, every lake starts with one drip of water, and obviously if we want to change the overall scheme and plan of this area from industrial, we got a lot of work to do. This whole neighborhood, I mean, just almost adjacent to this is the old lignite gasification plant that has been abandoned, I mean, for all practical purposes out of use since the 70s. Marilot is not going to go anywhere, so there's always going to be a spur, a railroad spur there. They probably use this rail bed more than anybody else in that area. You have a prison that's in close proximity. You have, I mean, the landfill is there. As I said, every lake starts with a drop, but I don't know that a coffee shop is necessarily the starting point for a major overhaul of this particular area. And that's what I'm hearing today is that the conflict comes with the interest in opening a coffee shop. So I'm going to hold for a more timely opportunity to consider rezoning of the area until there's a larger plan in place. And so I'll be upholding the recommendation to deny. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in with a question about the future land use plan update that you mentioned next year, I assume that's a citywide process, and can you talk about the timing of that?
There are a couple other things on the agenda that we need to get started first, and we've got some huge projects, but that is one. I would assume it would probably be about this time next year that we would bring that forward. And again, when we update our future land use plan, we go into the individual neighborhoods. We notice, we use auditoriums in schools. We want the folks that live there to come in and have a voice in what should happen in those neighborhoods. So that does take a significant amount of time. And this is something we do internally. We don't hire a consultant to do. Staff goes out and does this.
I appreciate that. I think that's needed for these parts of our community, as Todd noted, as our routes change, as our street designations change, as our community changes, we have to be cognizant of that. It's super tough, though, to take 1 4-acre parcel on a street that, of if not hundreds of acres between Campbell and the railroad tracks, and say that this needs to be different than the surrounding areas. I guess I'm leaning towards believing that it should be commercial, though, because I think that this is an entrance corridor, and I think there should be a buffer from the street to industrial uses. Tough, though. Anybody have a motion or other comments? Karen.
I make a motion to deny the request for rezoning from heavy industrial to the commercial.
All right. Second. Karen made the motion to deny. Jeff, I believe, seconded that. Eric seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. So it passed with Mike Quasney and myself voting no, the motion to deny. Did I miss anybody's vote otherwise? No. Okay. That takes us to item number 9.
Good morning again. So today we are going to hear a proposed vacation home ordinance. We'll go through kind of the background, what's in the proposed ordinance, and how we got here today through our presentation. So in 2024, staff was requested by various council members to put together a vacation home ordinance. This started, Rapid City's housing market has changed significantly during and after the pandemic. I think we've all felt that. And at the same time, whole home rentals as a lodging experience through websites like Airbnb, VRBO, were becoming more prevalent as an investment opportunity in town as well with our tourism economy and such. So in the past few years, we've steadily seen around 600 to 1,000 listings. And keep in mind, those are listings. The actual amount of vacation homes may vary. And that's just in Rapid City. So staff often gets questions about vacation homes, whether it's from operators looking to invest in one and make sure that they're following the rules, or if neighbors are concerned about those that they see in their neighborhoods and want some method of enforcement. And currently our zoning code does not actually address vacation homes in a way that is clear and precise to regulate them. So operators are taking a risk then and investing in having a vacation home, and complaints don't have a definitive enforcement process that we follow. So staff, again, started working with an advisory committee that was formed in June 2024 to help with putting together a vacation home ordinance. I'd like to recognize those in our advisory committee. There were 18 members. A lot of those were just volunteers and spent a lot of time and effort and really invested in this process and gave great feedback and care about our community. And so we held 6 meetings with them. Those reps have very varied interests, so we had very interesting meetings. We had those that own and operate vacation homes, the hotel industry, tourism, those working in housing, because there is a nexus with our housing market. Neighborhood group representative from neighborhoods with high concentration of vacation homes, real estate professional, as well as state representative, council members and staff, many of whom are in the audience today. The committee spent, as I said, a significant amount of time discussing the options. And then over the course of the year, we also had 2 open houses and got public feedback on those options and the committee recommendation to see what the public thought. Those public comments were taken into consideration with the final recommendation that you'll see later in the slides. This was the advisory committee's mission statement. We agreed on this from the first meeting and revisited each time. Ultimately, there was recognition that an ordinance is needed to permit them, since there's no really mention of them in our zoning code today. This gives them a path forward. Doing so, there was a strong effort to represent and balance those competing interests between different industries as well as neighborhoods. That also helps create a fair playing field with other hospitality providers and maintain neighborhood character. So this is our proposed definition of vacation homes. We started with the state definition, which they do regulate, and I'll get into that. But we refined it a bit for Rapid City specifically. And just to clarify, so vacation homes are shorter term, so not monthly, whole home rentals where the owner or manager is not on site during the time of the rental. So the State Department of Health does currently require a lodging license for vacation homes and a safety inspection similar to other lodging providers like hotels and specialty resorts. So as the committee began review, they looked at the current state requirements, which you'll see up at the screen. These protect the safety of those staying in the vacation home when they're not familiar with their surroundings in case of an emergency, for livability purposes and public health. So you'll notice things like fire safety, water safety, housekeeping, general livability factors and safety factors. There was agreement from the committee that since these are covered by the State Department of Health, our ordinance would just need to require that license or proof of that license prior to being allowed in the city in order to address those requirements, so these are not duplicated in the ordinance that's proposed. And I'll hand it off to Marlo.
All right, so once the committee had a strong understanding of what the state already requires, we started to discuss what would be needed in a local ordinance. And as Jessica already highlighted, I just want to say that this was really where I think the bulk of the hours were spent and where the individual expertise and experiences of the committee members really shone through. So I just want to thank them for looking at this from honestly every conceivable angle. And if we were to talk through all of the topics that were discussed, we would be here for a couple of days. So we'll just cover the higher I guess, priority items. So first and foremost, starting with permitted use, as Jessica already noted, the Rapid City zoning code does not currently address vacation homes, which creates a bit of a legal gray area for operators. So there was general consensus among the group that by creating an ordinance that defines vacation homes as a permitted use, we'll be able to provide a clear legal path for operators to comply with basic local and state regulations so that they can be assured that their investment is sound and that they can legally provide this important hospitality amenity within our community. The second topic of discussion was around safety. So as Jessica noted, there's several safety factors that are looked into by the state through that licensing process. And when we reached out to the state, we found that currently less than 1% of active vacation home listings in Rapid City have obtained that state license, which does bring into concern some potential safety factors for those looking to stay in vacation homes when they come to visit Rapid City. So that also brings into focus some of the inequities that may currently exist between other hospitality operators, since, as we've seen with the 1% of vacation homes obtaining that license, there's a bit of an inequity there in terms of the requirements that they're supposed to be meeting with those safety requirements. And I do want to highlight that this was an action identified in the 2025 comprehensive plan to start identifying ways that we can even the playing field there for hospitality providers. By creating this ordinance, we would ensure that operators have gone through the state safety inspection process and that we're creating that even playing field. So another reason that this ordinance is needed is because it creates an enforcement mechanism for the city that we currently lack. The majority of vacation home operators in Rapid City are great neighbors. They take pride in their listings. However, complaints do arise, most consistently related to issues with parking and noise, particularly in those listings that we've got larger homes being utilized that sometimes end up acting more as event spaces. Adopting regulations at the local level will allow us to obtain 24-hour contact information so that we're able to hold operators accountable in those instances where there are complaints that come in, legitimate complaints that come in, and that we can address those in a timely manner. So, registration and monitoring. Rapid City is one of the last communities in the Black Hills region to not have adopted vacation home rental regulations. And this has come with the benefit of us being able to work with other communities throughout the hills and learn what has worked well and what has not worked well through their regulations. And I think one of the primary things that we learned is that as other communities have rolled out their regulations, the enforcement piece has been difficult. And one thing that Rapid City would be looking at doing differently to learn from, some of the things that other communities have faced in terms of challenges of enforcement is we would purchase a registration and monitoring software that would allow us to track and enforce regulatory compliance through the registration process. So that would look like a fee of less than $100 for an annual registration to cover the cost of purchasing that software. And that will allow us to make sure that we're adopting enforceable regulations and that we don't have to hire additional staff, which did come up as a topic of concern among the committee. So I would say one of the biggest areas of discussion through this process was in relation to housing. So that's primarily because of the fact that given the residential nature of vacation homes, they do fit into the housing landscape. And as the committee reviewed existing listing information, there was recognition that there are heavier geographic concentrations of listings in our older neighborhoods that do tend to not have covenants or homeowners associations, and that's where a lot of our older, more naturally affordable housing stock is located. So while market conditions have improved since the crunch that we were experiencing following the pandemic, through the comprehensive plan process, we did hear that housing affordability and availability are still a primary concern and challenge for community members. So by adopting vacation home rental regulations now, we can be proactively gathering data specific to our local market so that we can better understand how vacation homes fit into the larger housing puzzle, and we can be prepared to answer some of the specific questions related to our local market that we do not currently have the data to answer and make data-driven decisions moving forward should we need to revisit these regulations in the future. And public feedback, in general, I would say the majority of potential regulatory options, such as whether or not there's a need to cap the overall number of vacation homes in the community or regulate at the individual neighborhood level. The community was more evenly divided on those kinds of topics, but overwhelmingly there was support for the need to require local registration. So what would local registration look like? This would really allow us to address the gaps that the state requirements do not currently cover. So as I noted previously, annual registration requirement with a fee of less than $100. The property owner would have to sign the application. Registration would be required for each individual listing, and the registration number must be included in all advertisements. So a couple things there. There was discussion around what types of housing should vacation homes be allowed in. So should they be allowed in apartment buildings? Should they be allowed in single-family building or single-family homes? And ultimately, the committee landed on, as long as the property owner, if you live in an apartment, as long as your property owner is comfortable with you renting out your apartment for a month while you're out of town, they found that was not a major concern. And then with the registration number being included in the advertisements, that allows us, if we do receive a complaint, to quickly identify the property. Again, we will have that ongoing 24-hour contact information that would be maintained for property owners that may be more than 50 miles from Rapid City. The local contact would be required so that, we do see out-of-state investors purchasing homes, operating. That makes sure that that use is accountable to the surrounding neighbors. And then with that registration not being transferable, that allows us to ensure that, should someone purchase the home, also want to operate it as a vacation home, that we have that 24-hour contact information. The signed affidavit would be required, and that's basically the property owner acknowledging that they understand the requirements that they need to meet. That keeps the city from having to do, extensive inspections that the state's already covering. Again, keeping us from having to hire additional staff. And then where the committee landed, no one wants to impact operators' ability to provide this amenity within the community. So the committee agreed that a 6-month grace period would be allowed to go through that licensing and registration process. So with that, I will hand it off to Vicki.
Thank you. So let me just say that it was almost a year of meetings with a very diversified group. Some days it felt like herding cats. It seemed like we would take 3 steps forward, then we'd have an open house, and those that had concerns with vacation homes had a strong showing at those open houses. So then the committee would spin backwards and we were at ground zero, and then we would start up again. So after our last open house and going back to ground zero, we got together and we said, look, we've come to some good solutions here. Let's take a vote. Let's go with the majority rule. And there were 14 voting members on the committee, and on this particular day, 11 committee members were present. And so what we determined was that, yes, unanimously, registration is a good thing. It protects the rights of those that are operating a vacation home today and makes it fair and consistent for anyone that wants to enter the market. Because those that are currently operating vacation homes are truly doing a very good job. We do have some problem properties, especially those larger ones that have many bedrooms that become more of an event facility. But overall, these are the cute lots in the neighborhood. They're well-groomed. And so we didn't want to penalize them. We wanted to reward that. So the decision was, we're going to allow these in all zoning districts that currently allow residential, with the exception of those that don't, which is the industrial, flood hazard, mining and extraction, shopping center, public and airport zones. That wouldn't impact anyone that's operating right now. We wanted to follow suit with what the state recommends and what many other communities currently have adopted, which is limit the occupancy to a maximum of 2 per bedroom plus 2 additional guests. Those are your sofa surfers. Because these are all pretty much operating in residential areas on residential streets, these homes already have the requirement for 2 on-site parking spots. And the adjacent street, in most all cases, is designed to provide for on-street parking. So we landed at, let's just stick with the 2 off-street parking spaces for the vacation home. If they do have 4 bedrooms and there's 3 couples that come to meet there, they could park in the driveway, and then they could also park in the street in front of the home, and it wouldn't negatively impact the neighborhood. However, because of the number of complaints that we have received on those larger facilities, the group did, at a vote of 10-1, concur that those larger homes, those should be a conditional use permit. We should have the ability to bring it into Planning Commission, let the neighbors have a voice in what they've witnessed or what their concerns might be. And so that was, I think, a good compromise within the group. There were interested individuals on the committee that were really looking at preserving the integrity of the historic district, in particular West Boulevard. There is a significant number of vacation homes existing in that area, and there was discussion as to whether or not we should make those a conditional use permit too. Where we landed was no. The 11-1 review will be needed for any of those homes currently operating that do not have a state license, and they will need to secure one. And as we previously discussed, the state license is going to require that these homes have egress windows. Some of these historic structures will not receive that 11-1 permit to replace those windows if they don't meet that historic review standard. So we think there will be some attrition in that just due to the 11-1 review requirement. So the committee agreed we would not require a conditional use permit for the historic district. Looking at whether or not we should cap it, other communities have tried that. What it does, though, is it elevates the existing vacation homes. Their value has just shot up. And there seems to be a natural market evaluation that those in the business do. We've seen some vacation homes turn into monthly rentals. We've seen a significant slowdown of vacation homes when the tourist season isn't there to support it. So we landed on let's not cap it at this time. When we do have the software data in place, then we can actually look at real factual numbers to see if there is a neighborhood that's inundated or if there should be a cap in the future. But at this point, without that concrete data, we didn't want to make that limitation or hindrance. That 6-month grace period, we know that the Department of Health has a limited number of inspectors. So less than 1% currently have a license. When they work with us to bring their properties into compliance with the state, which is required right now even if the city does nothing, then we want to give the state the additional time and the vacation home owners the grace period to work with them and bring that forward. And our goal was, let's regulate it for those who do have valid concerns and living in a neighborhood that do make complaints, but again, making this as user-friendly for the vacation home operators, yet being fair and equitable to what we require of the hotel industry. So, what does this mean? How do you operate a vacation home in Rapid City? Well, you have to go get your state license. That's required right now. Annual registration, allowed in all zoning except those that don't allow residential, 2 off-street parking, maximum occupancy as stated, and a CUP only if it's more than 5 bedrooms. That's where the committee landed, and that's the ordinance that you have attached to the item in the agenda. So we've got several on the committee here in the audience today. And again, not all of us landed exactly where we needed to be, but we went with the majority vote. We'll stand for questions, and we encourage you to take public comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. We do have several speaker requests. I'll start with Peter Schmid.
Hello. My name is Peter Schmid. I was on the committee. I really enjoyed it. It was long. I appreciate all the work everybody did. But I just can't help myself by speaking to you today. I should warn you, my demeanor is sometimes stern. I'm not as passionate about this as you might expect, but I do have a lot of vacation rental experience in town, property management, long-term, short-term. I love the short-term rental. I think it's been great for our community. That being said, Steve Jobs has a great quote: if you define the problem correctly, you almost have the solution. The short-term rental committee first met in July of 2024, but the conversation has been going on for much longer. Why so long? We are having a tough time finding a problem to solve. My suggestion, I knew, if there's a committee that is tasked with coming up with the regulation, this is a great one that we could. But my suggestion is not to do anything. Take the win. They're working well in Rapid City. The tourist pie has grown so much over the last 5 years, hotels included. This is a way for your average Rapid Cityan to participate in the hospitality business. They're never going to own a hotel, but they love being in the business. So if you can't define the problem, so if cars were racing through Rapid City, if we would come up with speed limits and stop signs, if people were eating contaminated food, we'd come up with regulations. We don't have a problem. The police and fire department are not asking for our help. They aren't spending resources on short-term rentals. The Department of Health isn't getting a lot of complaints from people who are having a bad experience in an Airbnb. In fact, if you go to TripAdvisor, sort hotels in Rapid, worst to best, read the reviews of the worst hotels, they have the Department of Health license. So there's no guarantee that once you have that license, you're doing good for your guests. I personally have probably had 5,000 Airbnb check-ins. I can count the bad ones on one hand. They've just been great. For the last 8 years, the committee was presented with complaints on 25 properties. We didn't have all the details of every complaint. Most of these were just complaints that they were Airbnbs, not a specific noise or the police were called or any real disturbance to you. And just because your neighbor, is a short-term renter versus a long-term, doesn't mean you can't enjoy your property. Taxes are being collected and paid. The city can tell you on that. With home values, I just want to say I've seen the rise in home values in Rapid City. I'm a licensed realtor too. We've had increased economic activity. We stayed open during COVID. We created all these short-term rentals as a response to the demand. Home prices are going up because we're an economically vibrant part of the country. They're up all over the country. Every asset value is up. The more successful Elevate is, if we don't increase our home supply, our home prices are going to go up. If there's a new hospital in town and we don't increase homes, they're going to go up in value. So that's my 3 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rod Pettigrew.
Thank you, Commission. I'm here as a resident, 1203 St. Cloud Street, where there are a lot of short-term rentals, and I'm also here speaking not on behalf of the City Council, but I am on the City Council and was an active participant in this process. It went on a long time, and I'm glad we've come this far and we can get something before us. My concern, as a resident, within my home at 1203 St. Cloud, there's 4 or 5 short-term rentals. to Peter's point, they haven't been a problem. They really haven't. Sometimes there's some parking issues, but there's parking issues with houses. So I can't say they're a problem. I guess my big concern is I've been made aware that last year either 124,000 or 144,000 nights were booked in short-term rentals in Rapid City. I can't believe that. That's amazing. So I just want to make sure they're competing with the hotel, motel industry. I just want to make sure on one side that they're collecting the same fees. They're having to pay the bed food tax. All those fees that a hotel has to pay should be collected by short-term rentals. And the safety issues, if a hotel is required to provide some sort of safety system, I think, to be fair, the short-term rentals should meet that same requirement. There are probably within 4 or 5 blocks of me 2 properties that are creating problems. I get calls from the neighbors. And to Vicky's point, we have no enforcement policy. And I tell the neighbors, well, we don't have a policy, so there's nothing we can do. So I think having this will give us, some ability when there's problems to step in and correct that. Is this ordinance perfect? No. Is there things we disagree on? Yes. But I look at this as the first step, and as things change, things don't work, I think we'll have to come back and mold and modify, improve, disconnect. But I just think we need a policy, and this is a good first step to start the process and see how it works. Thank you.
Thank you. Caleb Arsenault?
Good morning. My name's Caleb Arsenault, and I was honored to be part of the committee with Vicki and the team, and they really did a great job. We did put a lot of work into it. I'm the CEO of Live Hospitality. We have 13 hotels in and around the Black Hills of South Dakota, and I've been part of this discussion in multiple cities. So it is something that every municipality is taking a look at. The hotel industry is asking for a level playing field. I think short-term rentals has a place. I think they're necessary. I think it's a positive part of the visitor experience. So I'm not against short-term rentals. I do think it needs to be a level playing field. You know, there are requirements we as hoteliers have to abide by. We have sprinkler systems, we have fire suppression systems, we have emergency procedures. We have things that we have to do to provide for the safety and security of our guests that are staying with us. And I think short-term rentals, while maybe not going to those lengths, need to do something to ensure the safety and security of our visitors to our area. Part of the discussion with short-term rentals is always the negative effects on affordable housing. I do think there is a concentration discussion to happen in the future, but I do think this proposed ordinance is a positive step in the right direction to address some of these needs. I would like to remind the Planning and Zoning Committee here that at the end of the day, these are commercial businesses being run in residential areas. And in fact, so much, there's over 1,000 short-term rental listings here in Rapid City. And to put that in perspective, that's the equivalent to over 10 additional hotels in the market, right? And these short-term rentals have actually created, and management companies have been born of these multiple listings, all in residential areas. And they're all paying residential property taxes. So when we talk about level playing fields, there's multiple facets to this. I think the lodging and health inspections, such as the state law indicates, should be compulsory. That has to happen and has to be enforced. And again, I think this proposed ordinance is a positive step in the right direction to make sure we have created a level playing field with the hotel industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Derby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Mike Derby, 3912 Park Drive. And I was on the advisory committee, as you saw, and for a couple reasons. One, I was there as a state representative, in case there was legislation that came out of this committee that would have to go to the state and be provided and to make this a viable product. But what we found is, as you heard, there's already rules, regulations, and statute in place, and a lot of it's overseen by the Department of Health. So that part of the never happened, and I didn't have to worry about that. But I'll tell you a little story. What I got involved was in this whole thought process was 10 years ago when I owned the Canyon Lake Resort. And we had the owner's home on the property that we bought. We wanted to convert and have a rental out of it. And so we went to the city, and it was all well and good. So we had to pave the road leading to the property at the Canyon Lake Resort, and then we had to put a sprinkler system in. So about $47,000 later, I get my certificate of occupancy. All well and good. And then shortly after that, there's a similar house in Chapel Valley, same size and location approximately, went into the Airbnb system. And what did they have to do? Exactly, nothing. And so there was a move back in the time, worked with Vicki Fisher in 2016, worked with putting together an ordinance, and at that time the political will of the council did not want to move forward, and that was 2016. We had about 100 properties that fit that category, and now on any given day there's 6 to 10 times that in the marketplace. So we did a lot of work. I give a lot of credit to Vicki and her staff. I mean, I don't know how many ordinances you have where you have 6 meetings, public input, and I think we came up with a product that we could be proud of and can be implemented. I did not get everything I wanted. I wanted to have some kind of notification for the neighbors that, hey, there's somebody that's coming to your neighborhood that's going to have a vacation home. Maybe you should know about it. Well, that fell on the cutting room floor, and that's okay. We had a majority vote, and so majority rules in my world, majority rules, and in your world, majority rules. And so I think you've got a good product in front of you, and I'm supportive of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark Miller?
Morning, I'm Mark Millar. I'd like to talk to you about this. I'm a little bit confused. A few years back, Rapid City denied all commercial businesses in residential areas. Denied all of us who operated our businesses out of our homes from operating our homes out of residential areas. I started my business 18 years ago as an electrical contractor, a one-man shop. I knew I'd be standing at the planning desk on a regular basis, and so I asked them before I even started my business, is this okay? And they said, fine, no problem. Do not get any freight delivered to your house by semis. That was the condition. Operated there, never had a complaint. I talked to all my neighbors, we're all friends. I'm a little concerned how we have 1,000 commercial operations in our residential neighborhoods, apparently with 1% compliance with the rules that are already made by the state. Is the city going to propose allowing us to return our private businesses to our homes? I'm a one-man operation. I didn't disrupt anybody. At the time when the city changed that rule, the word that I got from a council member was because we were unable to regulate a operation doing body work until midnight in their neighborhood, because we couldn't come up with a regulation to regulate that man, we threw a blanket ordinance on no commercial businesses in our residence. Is that not still the rule? I'm a little confused here. In Rapid City right now, we have a huge problem of not allowing grass to grow under anything we do. You guys are moving the goalposts all the time. But what's quite obvious from this meeting is the state needs to step in and start regulating people. As a licensed electrician, I have been held a license regulated by the state a lot longer than all of the other trades. I have to maintain my business license, maintain my business insurance, just to maintain my license, which I gained through 65,000 hours on the job. We need regulation of this industry, certainly. And I don't care who steps up, but I will be operating my shop out of my home. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's the last.
Mr. Chair, if
Yeah,
I could just give a summation. Mark always makes good points, and just a point of clarification. So whether you're renting a home on a monthly basis or a nightly basis, when you're there, you're using it for residential purposes. We do have an allowance within the zoning ordinance that says if you want to do a business from your home, it's called a home occupation. Based on the scope of it, it could be a conditional use permit that would require notification to the neighbors. But there are many, many businesses operating from their homes that align with the criteria, similar to the vacation home. If you're 5 or less bedrooms, you'll be permitted. If you're larger, functioning more as an event, then in those cases too, it'll be a conditional use permit. I wanted to share with you the significance of the registration. One of the things we did, just a random search of 100 vacation homes and found that 25% of them have checked the owner-occupied box at DOE. And so when we stand up this registration software, we get to sit back, and it's a minimal fee, and we'll have the users pay for the fee, and it will do an automatic search every day of every website that does vacation home listings, not just Airbnb and Vrbo, because a lot of people have learned, get off those two, go to an obscure one, the public knows about it, you won't get caught. This will do a random search of 5,000 to 10,000 websites daily, and then those that land in Rapid City, they will get an automatic letter saying you need to come into compliance. Staff doesn't have to do that, just a form letter. And we are working with them so that it's very user-friendly. We want to invite people to come in and come into that compliance. And having that equal playing field is important for the hospitality industry across the city. I think it's interesting that Councilman Roberts, who is on the committee, came to one meeting, the first meeting, and at the end of the meeting he said to me, Vicki, I agree with registration. We should allow it in all zoning districts. We shouldn't limit it. And I think the parking for the house should deal with it. And then he got to skip all the meetings, and that's basically where the committee landed. So I think he had some great foresight, and I just jest with him on that. So we're here for questions if you have them.
John, you got to tell us the lottery numbers too. Chip.
Good morning. I feel that the fire department feels this is a much needed issue. I've stayed in some in different towns, and I walk in, 3-story house, not one smoke detector. So it's something that we need to get a handle on to ensure the safety of people that are visiting our community. And then also I have a question on the fee rate. I think it's light. If I get one complaint, it's just, if I take one staff member to go look at that property, that's an hour, $100. If you talk about all the costs that go into that. And I think, compared to other cities, our fees need adjustment on all across the board, to be competitive. But yeah, I think that's what we need to look at.
All right. Eric Hikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm all fired up, actually. This is something I have a lot of opinions about. Mr. Millar, I do appreciate you. I started my business in the addition on the back of my house, too. and we grew it into something pretty exciting. So I really appreciate, Caleb, your comments, and yours, Mike. I do appreciate Peter and the everything I've heard today. I really think we need this. I really think we need this. It is something that brings above board and puts daylight on something that kind of is a little bit, doesn't have enough daylight on it. A lot of these are kind of de facto underground black market-ish. These are harsh terms, but until we know about them and we can see them and have data on them, then we don't know, right? So this brings everything above board, and I really am supporting it for those reasons. I'm going to say a couple things that are a little softer, maybe, but a lot of these in neighborhoods basically transplant, my neighbors, Renee and Brian and Dan and Tom, and across the street. They no longer become my neighbors. That's just a ADU. That's a rental unit, and enough of those, and you don't really have much of a neighborhood anymore. You just have an area filled with rentals, and that's not a neighborhood. That's not why we live in these places. Powder House Pass in Lead is almost 85% rentals, and that's not a neighborhood either. That's a party subdivision where they overwhelm their garbage and they overwhelm their sewers, and they plug up the sewers with condoms, and there's multiple issues with enforcement all the time. That is not what we want in our town, right? So we told the administrator of Sturgis this kind of the same thing about the rentals in their downtown. You hold the hand that holds you down during the rally. If you think that your community is going to benefit from renting out all these businesses during the rally and then standing vacant the rest of the year, you're mistaken, right? So I don't think we should subordinate ourselves to a higher paying fee from somebody that wants to come in and rent these properties. Where is the teacher going to live? Where's the policeman going to live? There's plenty of apartments out there, but what about the people that want a house, right? And so if we've supplanted them, I'm going over my 3 minutes here, I know, but if we've supplanted them with rentals, then we have an issue with housing. That we have an housing issue. I think this impacts the housing as well. I am in full support of it, and I thank you for listening to me about this.
All right, Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is very much needed. I can't believe it hasn't happened prior. I have a question about the inspection process, whether it's a new, or existing rental. I wonder how much burden, how far the inspection process will go, and what level, and the hotel industry obviously is regulated, they're consistent. Hotels have to have X, Y, and Z for compliance and safety and all that. My question is, private rentals are probably all over the map. Old, new, large, small. And this may not even be established yet, but what will the standard be for inspections? Are they going to go into code? Are they going to go into, adopting, IRC or the international codes? What would that process look like? I guess I'm wondering how much of a burden that will put on people that are already functioning, and people that if they want to get into this business, how much of a burden will this inspection come down on them?
So as we mentioned in the presentation, Department of Health will do the inspection.
That's the state?
That's the state.
Okay.
Will do to address these issues, to ensure that they've got the fire safety that Chip mentioned and egress windows, make sure the water's safe, look at the electrical wiring, general housekeeping, garbage. That's one of the complaints we do get, is that they had a party in the backyard and garbage blew all through the neighborhood. So that will be done. at that level. And then for us, they're confirming by signing an affidavit that they are providing the 2 off-street parking spots and that they're going to keep the occupancy to the limits as noted. And then we don't go out and inspect that, even though with Google Map and Rapid Map, we can pull everything up, go down on the street side, and we don't need to go on site to confirm a lot of it.
Okay, but it will be an annual, as proposed, it'll be an annual inspection once a year for
Right,
all the
and
safety and.
exactly.
Okay.
The reason we're giving that 6-month grace, we want to work with these operators and allow them to keep operating in the meantime. But DOH needs that time because they are short-staffed. And one of the reasons why we were so excited to have Mike on the committee, who also sat on appropriations, is maybe they need more funding to hire more people.
Right.
I'm going to plant that seed every chance I get.
Yeah. So the DOH regs for this is crafted, tailored to this kind of, not
Vacation
mimicking
homes.
hotel or hospitality regs.
This is their regulation specific for vacation homes across the state.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
I'm going to hop in with the follow-on question. Just to your point, did you have any discussions with the state? Are they ready to review 1,000 homes in Rapid City in the next 6 months?
Long discussions. I think we know them all really well. And they need that grace period for them to keep up with the requests that they're going to be getting. And we anticipate that there will be some that will jump on the bandwagon and they will submit for their license right away. Because remember, if you don't have a state license, you can't register. And then we do have authority of compliance from there. And as long as they're working with the state in getting that license and we're collaborating with the state, we'll give them whatever time that's needed to ensure that that gets done and then work with them on registration. We might have a preliminary registration with the city so that we get that contact information while they're continuing to work with the state on securing the license. And we do that for other uses too. When we have to go to another agency to license something, if they're working on it, then we'll allow them to continue that operation as long as they're working towards the end result.
Okay, so if someone comes in for a new one in 3 months and is right in the middle of the inspection process of all the existing ones, and they can prove that they've contacted the Department of Health, that there will be possibly an extended grace period
Right.
for those. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. I mean, we're hopeful that the state can get additional staff and address these as needed. But if there needs to be we are not going to penalize the operators if the state does not have the employees necessary to act in a timely manner.
Okay. Sorry to jump in there. John Roberts.
Thank you very much, and I'll keep this brief, maybe. I would have a lot to say about this, but I'll say it at the council. But I do want to go back to the 2016 ordinance because I was a part of that. The biggest reason that ordinance didn't pass at that time was it would have way overregulated vacation rentals. And that was also during that time where Airbnb was suing every municipality that was bringing in these ordinances. And, you know, when I saw San Francisco lose, I thought, you know, Rapid City probably wouldn't have much of a chance on that. But one of the things that ordinance at that time would have done is it would have created the city as the compliance officer. So we would be out inspecting them all, we would be permitting them all, which would have added more staff. We would have had to add more staff at the time, even though there wasn't very many. We knew it was going to be a growing, you know, business because it was just blowing up all over the country. So I like what I see here looking through the ordinance. I think that there's some language change and a few small things, but most of what I'm seeing I think is going to work well. There's not a lot of over-regulation on this, in my opinion. And it also does keep it on a fair playing field with the hotel, you know, industry. Also, the taxes the state should be getting will be getting off of it. 1% compliance on 1,000, quote-unquote businesses is a pretty low percentage. I don't think that it's going to cause a lot of over-regulatory burden on anyone. And now I want to go back to my profession as a realtor, broker, owner of a real estate company in Rapid City. I have not touched vacation rentals since 2016 because I knew there was going to be some kind of ordinance coming into place, and I didn't want the liability of telling somebody the wrong thing. Because if I tell somebody, I'm going to sell you this, you're taking it as a short-term rental, and then all of a sudden 6 months later something changes, and 6 months is kind of a stretch because it takes 2 years to do anything in the city. No offense, Vicki, or 2016 to 2009 years. So, I think that this is a good step. I think that, again, we're not really over-regulating anyone. The fees, now, of course, the fire department always wants more money, so, I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm more worried about how we are going to keep them all in compliance and what the penalties will be for not being in compliance and how we're going to regulate that. And that's more that we can talk about. But we got to get the ordinance in place first because there's always going to be things you're going to have to iron out after the fact. So anyway, I do support it pretty much as it is, probably with a couple of changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Haven.
Thank you. I'm also in support of the ordinance. I was concerned also with the enforcement. I note that as you define a vacation home under this ordinance, there's a lot of short-term rentals that will be outside of the ordinance. Example, apartment complex that with an on-site manager that sets aside 2 or 3 apartments for short-term rentals, or the homeowner who has an apartment in the home that is rented on short-term rentals. Apparently, those are both outside of the ordinance and wouldn't be regulated. I guess maybe one question I have: are those regulated or required for a permit by the state? So is the state regulating those?
I think I'm confused by your question.
The short-term rentals that are not included in this ordinance, exempted are under 14 days, on-site manager, owner. I guess are those short-term rentals regulated in any manner by the state? Because they're not regulated under this ordinance.
No, we've got what I call the Sturgis-Raleigh provision in state law, that anyone can rent their home for 14 days in a calendar year with no limitation. And so no, those wouldn't have to get a license. Those would not be inspected. If you have a rental with a manager, that's leaning more into the hotel. And so those two have a whole different set of regulations.
And a homeowner that has an apartment in their home, that's also outside of the ordinance. No,
it could be allowed as an accessory dwelling unit for a 30-day rental, or it could be allowed as a vacation home. This ordinance just requires the property owner to sign the registration saying, yes, we want to have the second unit on the property operating as a vacation home. In fact, when we stood up the accessory dwelling unit regulation, we put a provision that they could not be used for short-term rentals. But really, those are where we want them, because the owner has to be on the site, so there's oversight. So we would probably be looking at doing an ordinance amendment in the future.
But as I read the definition of a vacation home, it does not include a home that has an apartment in the home where the owner is living. That is outside of the definition of this ordinance.
Kinsley, could you help us understand that? Because when it is home, cabin, or similar building, that doesn't mean that it's like just one structure. It can be a part of a building or the whole building.
So let me get into the concept of bed and breakfast too. So if you have a situation where you want to provide a bed and breakfast facility, there's already a conditional use permit that allows that type of thing. So thinking of a situation where you have, let's say it's a duplex or something like this. I need to recall this in terms of how we set it up, and maybe Marlo and Jessica can go back to that, because we took those out of there because of how they were defined, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. I have to think through that one first.
Okay,
and
so
maybe get back to you on that.
We call a home. It could be an apartment building. It could be a whole structure, but that's your home. It's your home. It could be a cabin or any other similar building that could then function as a vacation home. So it's not limiting. What we have said, in order to ensure that we don't have someone renting an apartment that's then going on a business venture for 3 months, and we've seen this, and then they've got their apartment posted on Vrbo because they want to make a little money. This ordinance would say the owner of the property must sign and allow you to do that, and that'll shut most of that down.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in favor of this ordinance. I point out a couple of things I think that deal with the enforcement, and there was some, that issue was brought up by a couple of the speakers. So, it's like any ordinance, we adopt it and we see how it works, and, there's always opportunity for amendment in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do think it's important to just speak quickly about compliance. So again, if someone doesn't secure the state license and registration, or if they don't do that annual renewal, our software company will automatically send them a letter stating you need to do this. And when that isn't done, they'll also notify us and say, you've got these violators. And then as we have a standard letter sent saying you need to comply within so many days or you're subject to a fine, and it's, as part of the ordinance, we're making the compliance with this fall within the nuisance regulations. That gives us solid legal backing if we should have someone that, a neighborhood that has a valid complaint, that makes it far more enforceable for the city to demand compliance. So we'll work with them, and as soon as that property owner picks up the phone, calls us and says, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this, I've tried, can you help me? Then they're working towards compliance, and we don't proceed with any compliance actions. We will work with them. And then if they continue after a reasonable amount of time to just ignore us, then it goes back to non-compliance and we can pursue that. But we try to be user-friendly with everybody.
I'm going to take a quick break here and ask for a motion to extend past 9 o'clock if we need it.
Second.
All right, Karen made the motion that we'll extend the meeting past 9 o'clock if necessary. Vince seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And I kind of wanted to follow on Haven's question about apartments. Smaller apartment complexes. I own one. I don't do short-term rentals, but I'm very aware that owners of those apartments use short-term rentals as sort of an ebb and flow situation of, depending on demand, they will lease short-term or long-term. I don't know that this registration system works well for that, and I guess I'm curious how the staff feels that that would work. Say if a place has 20 apartment units and any given time goes from 6 to 12 short-term rentals of different units.
Well, I think standing it up this way is the initial right thing to do. And if we've got an apartment owner that wants to do 5 of their 50 units as vacation homes, they'll need to register 5 times, pay the fee 5 times annually. And it'll be, once they do one, it'll be pretty easy to do the rest. But if someone were to come in and we've got someone looking at maybe bringing in, it's really going to be hotel apartments. They're going to function as vacation homes, but they're putting a manager's office right in the building, and so it's going to really function as a hotel. We wouldn't require registration for that.
If the apartment complex had a on-site manager, then it
No.
would not need to.
It would have to be zoned for a hotel, not for apartments. Because we have a lot of vacation homes in commercial areas.
Sure.
You know, one of the important things to note too is that these large apartment buildings that we have in town, these companies, when you sign that lease agreement, you're prohibited. You cannot operate a vacation home from your unit. Many of our new residential subdivisions have covenants that are on the property that says you cannot do any commercial activity, including vacation homes, short-term rentals out of those properties. So that really has limited the area that vacation homes can operate legally.
I guess I'm just bringing this up because what I've seen is that there's a number of landlords that use the high demand times. They offer short-term rentals, and then they do long-term leasing of furnished apartments in other times. And sometimes that long-term leasing, they'll just let it run through the high demand times. Does that turn into, okay, I've got apartment 3 as a short-term rental. Oh, no, it's not. Can you take it off the list? Do they need to be, notifying the city every time they make that change? Or do they just prescriptively say, we may operate apartment 3 as short-term or long-term. We have the license to do the short-term, but we'll do it at our discretion?
You answered your own question.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I do have, Jessica and I have been working with different rental platforms, registration platforms, so we've gotten to see the back end of some of this. And I think an easier way to think about it sometimes for me is thinking about it from like the user standpoint and within the app. Like Airbnb, VRBO, there's different parameters when you're looking for an accommodation. They say this is a whole home rental or this is a room within a home. And basically the rental software at that point is monitoring all of these sites on a daily basis. And they're tracking, okay, how long is this listing on? So even if an apartment owner didn't realize that they were renting beyond the limits of what's defined, that's where that compliance software comes into play, because that software does the work for us. It will notify the property owner that it's listed on Airbnb. Let's say the individual apartment has been listed on Airbnb for 30 days. Then that's where the compliance software comes into play, is it's tracking all of that. It will identify, you're within the bounds of needing a license or a local registration. So,
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
We have vacation home properties right now that during the tourist season, they're nightly, weekly rentals. And as we enter this time of year, they'll flip into monthly rentals. And getting it registered would open them up to be able to do both.
Agreed with all that. I think one thing that you'll want to consider is whether you offer a single registration for a property, just for compliance on a hotel would be similar. Whether they don't have to get every room registered, they just have to register their hotel.
Good point, good point. If, something that we might look at going into council, or if we hold firm to where we're at, because this is what the committee decided on. And remember, we start making one change and we seem to tumble back to zero. But the data that we can pull from this software, it's going to allow us to really come forward if there do need to be some additional changes. We're going to have solid factual information and not speculation. And I think we need that before we restrict vacation homes further than this ordinance proposes.
All right, I'll get off my pedestal. Pat Roseland.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the comments that were brought up today. Some of you I worked with on the committee, on the advisory board, and others not. But I really think this is a start. It's a minimal requirement to get control of the short-term rentals in Rapid City. And I remember over the last year going through this conversation, I'll say, there are times I thought that, are we ever going to get this thing done? It seemed like it just stopped. And as was said before by Vicki, we regrouped and came back. And after all, more information. So I really appreciate all the work that those who sit in the audience, our staff, who really put into this to get a start on this. And just me living on the West Boulevard, on West Boulevard, and seeing, I'm just saying, one building that is a short-term rental. You can tell it's a short-term rental because at Tuesday morning it's cleaned. The trash can sits out on the street from Tuesday to Thursday when the trash is picked up. We have a lot of windy days here in town, and I would appreciate if those who are cleaning or those who own those buildings wait and set up the trash can on Thursday for trash pickup, or Wednesday night, but not have it on the street all week waiting for this to happen. Now, I know this is a small thing, but in my mind, it's a big thing because I live on that street. And I just appreciate all the work that's been done, and the work is happening. The conversation we're having today is incredible. I think it's great, and that's what we're here for. And so I'm in favor of this, and I really hope it goes through. Thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Chair. There's a benefit, I guess, to wait until everybody else has spoken, and I'm glad we go past 9 o'clock so I can get at least a couple of quick questions in. And again, I want to thank the committee. I want to thank the citizens that have come forward to put this together. And I can relate to what John Roberts said about 2016 and trying to get this, trying to get something going on this type of housing and this type of service to community. I do want to ask a couple of quick questions, if I could, about the software. And I understand that you're saying that the software is only going to be $100 a year, and that the other question, I'll ask them both, and that is, well, and there may be another one after that, but who's going to have access to this software, and what kind of security process? One of the citizens came forward and wants to know what's happening in their neighborhood, and yes, there may be software that talks about this type of housing around the world, but who's going to be able to access it based on what the city is providing?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki.
So the fee is determined based on the cost of the software divided by the number of vacation homes that we believe we have in the community. Anything beyond that is a tax, and we do not want to be taxing the citizens. Similar to e-submittal, if someone submits an application to the city, the only ones that can see that are the city or those that we authorize. So if someone goes online and submits a registration, it's not out there for the world to see, it's out there for us to see. And it might be something that not only community development would look at, but the Public Works Department and or Fire Department, or those that need to be aware that that activity is going on at that property, the police department, but it will not be made for public access.
So the follow-up question to that is what kind of security is being provided for that? And you don't have to go into details because that's not what I'm expecting. I mean, I moved here in 1995. I don't remember checking with Senator Pressler about the same question about accessing computers and keeping kids off of porn sites and things like that. So what kind of security is being provided for that?
just like everything that the city has, our IT department has secure backup factors so that the public can't get into our information. Same consideration on anything that we would bring into the system for the public to put input into.
Have you ever had any kind of potential not violation or anybody trying to hack into that?
Not with Jim Gilbert on duty. I mean, certainly we've had people that have tried
attempted,
to,
yeah.
as the world has seen, but yeah, we've been very successful in protecting our information, whether it be how much someone is paying for a water bill or who submitted an application for on-sale liquor.
And that again goes to the fires question earlier, is that in addition, if you are identifying somebody who has not provided the proper safety conditions, who does that fall back on? Does that go back to the state, or is that going to be enforced locally?
So if there's a complaint that someone stayed at a vacation home and there were no smoke detectors or something, that would go to the state. If someone complains that they were parking on the front lawn or being loud, some of that would come to us, some of it would go to the police department, but those things already happen at single-family residential areas too. So we pretty much know how to divide that up, and depending upon what the complaint is, and it typically always originates in our office.
Can the city charge that applicant for that visit by the fire department?
No. We're here, we're paid to protect the city, and that's a part of our salary.
Thank you.
All right, Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, number one, I want to congratulate the committee and staff to get to this point. I mean, this has been several years in the coming, really, and there's probably things in here that are not what everybody wanted, but I think overall, if we start this process and get regulations in place, at least we have a backing to support something that is not in code or whatever. And I think down the road, there'll probably be things from the hotel industry that has questions and want to make changes, or the fire department adding more money or something. But I think that's a process that we will go through, and I think that's a good thing. So I'm real supportive of this regulation right now, this ordinance that's going forward. My only comment is I hope when it gets to the city council that they don't change a lot of it, because that would just set things back. I mean, I'm assuming they could change something in there, but I hope that doesn't happen. So that's my only comment.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
Always a reality, but we did have 4 council, while 3 of them were very good about attending almost every meeting, if not every meeting. The 4th one, he was made aware of what we were where we were at, and pretty much aligned with it. So as long as we've got the council speaking to each other, and I think that Mr. Roseland can attest to the fact he was recently a council member, they talk about these items before they come up for a vote, and they'll reach out to us if they've got questions. But at the end of the day, the hard work of that 18-person committee, I hope is respected in the ordinance that gets passed.
All right, Kinsley, back to you.
Okay. Going back to Haven's question that he had about kind of maybe the duplex situation, where you could have somebody who lives on one side of the duplex and they might want to rent something on the other side of the duplex out. So currently, if you look at the definition for vacation home, it's any home, cabin, or similar building that's going to be rented or leased in its entirety, and that's not occupied by an owner or manager during the time of rental. So that situation where you've got an owner occupier on one side of the duplex, and then on the other side of the duplex, you've just got the whole that side of the duplex rented out as a vacation home. It's captured currently within the definition of a vacation home, but it's just food for thought in the future in terms of whether that's a situation where you might want to make that make changes to the bed and breakfast facility so that if you think that it should be captured more as a bed and breakfast facility situation, that could be done. But right now, that is included in the definition of vacation home. But I was just going to talk about that in terms of maybe there are less concerns for that type of a situation and how to deal with it if there's a very nearby manager for that situation. But I also wanted to talk about the definition for a vacation home that's in the proposed 1704 737. So we basically took the definitions or looked at all these words: dwelling, single family dwelling, multifamily dwelling, and we said that a vacation home is not included in those definitions. So those somehow don't recapture what a vacation home is and allow it in certain districts. So that's why you see that language in there. So it's kind of a bit confusing when you look at the definition, but that's why that's in there, because we're pulling out the definition of a vacation home and wanting to make it clear that it's separate from the definitions for things like the dwelling, two-family dwelling, live-work dwelling, rooming house, all those things.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
Just a point of clarity. So when we first started, number one, it took us a whole meeting to come up with a mission statement. I mean, we just came from such different perspectives on this. But Peter can attest to this too. Those that were on the committee that were representing the vacation home industry, their statement was, these definitions in the ordinance already, the dwelling, the single family, they allow for residential use. That's all we're doing. People are coming here. It's their temporary residence. So when we wrote the definition for a vacation home, the reason why it says it does not include these is to ensure that there is a separation protecting the vacation home from any regulation that we might change specific to dwellings, single family, multifamily, etc. So if we decided to change the parking for single family, that we'd have to specifically change the parking for a vacation home. Now they're separate with their own parking regs. It's basically protecting the use of the vacation home.
All right, Alicia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for everyone who worked on this. I went to one of the open houses, and it seems like it's hard to capture everything the first go around in terms of figuring out how it's going to benefit the community. So I agree with other people that this is a good first step, and it's necessary, like we've heard, for getting closer to an equal playing field and the safety concerns. So I'm going to be voting in support of this ordinance. I do wonder a little bit more about, Haven's gone, but Haven's sort of line of questioning and the definition. So Marlo mentioned that the search engines will show, anything that's listed on these sites, which could include it could include a bedroom in a house that's occupied by the owner at the time. So I'm kind of wondering, based on the definition that Kinsley just mentioned, how that would, work in terms of registering that. So that seems like it might not be aligned with the current definition. Just a small point, but kind of wondering how those two would work together, just for people understanding that they do need to, it sounds like they would need to register because it will come up on the search engine, renting out a room in a home that you live in. So that's just one question I have, but I think this is a good start for us to get more data about the other concerns as well.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
We almost brought forward revisions to the bed and breakfast, because right now, vacation homes, you rent the whole home, it's permitted. But a bed and breakfast, you rent a bedroom, it's a conditional use permit. So that doesn't seem fair. We decided to bring this ordinance forward. We will be bringing forward an ordinance very quickly that addresses a bed and breakfast, and then we'll make sure all of this aligns as a part of that ordinance. That might be helpful to share at this time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I gotta find you again, sorry. Can you request again one more time?
So if it does come up on the search with Airbnb, so the city would see that as a bed and breakfast, and they wouldn't require that owner, even if they are posting on one of these short-term rental sites? Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mike Kwasny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the fire department brought up the safety of the families, not having the necessary safety features in a house. I think that's a good thing that'll come out of this. I like the fact, and John was right about not over-regulating this. Make it something that is comfortable to run. I did have a little question. We've got a new hospital that's coming into our community. I foresee a lot of traveling nurses, and I think it was identified here that won't affect it because the 28 days, I'm assuming a traveling nurse would be more than 28 days. I don't know if they're ever brought in for less than, for a short period. I'm not familiar if that's ever happened.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
So, Monument, who's here already, they do bring in a lot of traveling nurses. Those vacation homes, they get a little pricey if they're going to be here for 90 days or 6 months. There are those monthly rentals close to the Monument Hospital right now that are held in reserve for what they need for their teams. And I'm sure some of them live elsewhere throughout the community. But again, due to the price of the nightly rental on a vacation home, it's going to be cheaper for someone just to rent an apartment or an entire home for 30 days than to do a vacation home on a nightly basis. And the revenue that someone would get from that nightly rental is what they're trying to capture. So I don't know what kind of, maybe during certain times of the year when the tourist season isn't as strong, that would be a great continued use of that building if we have a traveling nurse coming in and they need it for 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with the traveling nurse industry. I have had the opportunity to rent to them. They're a good clientele. But at the same time, I bring up the other hospital only because I foresee that traveling nurse need increasing, not decreasing when we bring in another hospital. So it'll be an interesting thing to have, and it's a great addition to our community. So that was one of the concerns. But I think the safety for the families that are using those homes should be a top priority, and sometimes there's individuals, sadly, that don't take that into consideration as they rent. So I think that's an important part.
Eric Hikas?
Well, with the time waning, I'm about to turn into a pumpkin. So I have because I have to leave pretty quick. I'm gonna move we approve this ordinance or send it on to council for final action.
I'll second that.
All right, Eric made his motion as stated to approve. Vince seconded that motion. Discussion on the motion? I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. I think there needs to be a distinction between a vacation home and a vacation rental in an apartment building, multifamily dwelling. For that reason, I'm going to vote no, but it's mostly a protest vote. The council needs to hear this. They will hear this. All right. Anything else on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Just me. So, passes. John will get to discuss his issues at council. All right, anything else for today for the Planning Commission, Vicki?
I think this meeting's gone long enough.
All right. How about from the commission?
But I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Perfect. Vince made the motion. Jeff seconded that motion. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye. Little orange. Well, not that anybody couldn't have said anything more, it's just that I think we were done.
Yeah.
Because anybody else still wanted to add something.
Gotta call it at some point.
At some point, let's think about it.